got to make one check.
Mother of God, I thought. Here it comes.
Who is Antifa? They stormed the beaches of Normandy, parachuted into the French countryside, and gave their lives to face down and fight back against fascism. They took down Nazi machine gun nests, tore apart the Third Reich's strongholds, liberated concentration camps, liberated France, Italy, Belgium, Holland. Anywhere Antifa saw fascism, they fearlessly and relentlessly annihilated it. Fascism was defeated because of patriots like these, proud Americans.
Then strangled them, and finally dismembered their bodies.
Bright,
Then do
available.
and homelessness and all that. And now, the voice you've been waiting for.
There is a secret song at the center of the world, and its sound is like razors through flesh. I'm here to turn up the volume.
So a week and a half ago, this video came out, a promotional video from the Lincoln Project, a political action committee formed by former and present Republicans in 2019 to keep Trump from getting reelected. And they put out this video called The Real Antifa, basically comparing Antifa to the American soldiers that stormed the beaches of Normandy and liberated France and the rest of Europe from the Nazis, which is, I mean, if you don't know anything about Antifa, I guess it would make sense, because if all you know about Antifa is what you hear on the news, that they're just fighting fascism, then yeah, I mean, that wouldn't seem like that odd of a comparison to make. But there are some pretty big distinctions between, and they refer to Antifa as loyal Americans. But really, Antifa is very anti-American. I mean, these are people that would go around chanting, no Trump, no wall, no USA at all. No USA at all. But they're loyal Americans. I mean, these are people that would attack you for waving an American flag. People that get triggered by the sight of an American flag because they view the American flag as a symbol of racism. And so to compare them to the soldiers of World War II, it's a fucking disgrace. For years now, Antifa's been running around dressed like little homeless crackhead ninjas, burning down shit, looting, beating the fuck out of anybody who they see as weak, basically. I mean, they just go around terrorizing people in at least a half a dozen hotspots all over the country. And amazingly, they get protected. A lot of the politicians for years claimed that they claim they don't even exist, that it's just an idea. And they use this weaselly little word game to make that claim, because, yeah, I mean, there's no official group with a nationwide leader. I mean, Antifa is in actually a bunch of different countries. But it's like saying that the Hells Angels is just an idea. Because, I mean, they all have individual chapters. There's, nobody in control of all those chapters. But to say that as a group they don't exist, that it's just an idea, that's bullshit. And they know that. And for some reason, even though the media won't talk about it, they won't actually report on what they're doing, politicians deny that they even exist, and none of these fucking kids that are running around doing this, thinking that they're fighting the power, think that it's suspicious that the power is protecting them. Because if it actually got out and got reported on what they'd been up to for the past few years, they would get stomped out so quick. But they're allowed to fly under the radar, and when you've got the likes of, everybody from CNN to Fox News downplaying what you're doing and making you seem like you're the heroes, how do you not get suspicious about that and think that maybe, the whole thing is a setup? But when you see people actually try to engage some of these kids and talk to them, it kind of becomes clear why that is, because a lot of them are just fucking idiots. I mean, they've got the IQ of a wet brick, not an original thought in their heads. They just spew little tropes and sloganeering, and they really just have no concept of what it is they're even fighting for. Oh, we're fighting fascism. And how do we fight fascism? Well, we fight fascism with fascism. We go around, we suppress people from speaking ideas that we disagree with. We attack people that disagree with us. I mean, it's like, do they really think that fighting fire with fire means you bring a flamethrower to a wildfire to put it out? Because that's kind of what they're doing. That would be the analogy. We're going to defeat fascism by being more fascist than them. And they have their own unique little brand of anarcho-communism, which basically takes the worst aspects of both anarchism and communism and melds them together. And that's what they're fighting for. They want to turn this country into a communist non-state. They have absolutely no idea what would happen. I mean, when you try to point out all the horrors that happen when people actually tried to go down that road, their response is basically like, oh, well, it's never been properly tried. That's not real communism. But that's kind of the point, is real communism is a pipe dream. It's never going to work out, because the powerful people are still going to be powerful when you overthrow that system. And when you overthrow that system, it's just going to give them even more of an ability to use and abuse the little people like you. And in fact, it's going to make it 10 times easier, because now they don't have the state to even protect your rights as an individual. Even though, the state does a pretty piss poor job of that as it is, it'll get way worse when you just wipe all those rights off the table. Then they don't even have to pretend like they're trying to protect your rights, and boom, you're fucking done. But these kids run around acting like they're some kind of rebels, some kind of punk rockers trying to overthrow the system, and they have no idea that they're actually doing the bidding of the worst parts of the system. Speaking of worst parts of the system, there's also been the recent story, though it hasn't gotten a whole lot of coverage, and when it does, it just kind of gets glossed over like, oh, look at that. The biggest investment firm basically in the world, BlackRock, has been going around buying up houses, any kind of single family home dwelling they can get their hands on, wholesale, even buying up entire neighborhoods and offering like 50% over asking price. So a lot of people that would be buying houses, oh, sorry, you can't, because by the time you get in touch with a real estate agent, that $200,000 house that you could just barely afford, somebody just offered them $300,000 for it. And not just a person trying to buy it, but this big investment company. Not to try to turn around and sell it. No, they want to turn everybody into renters. I wonder if this has anything to do with that whole Great Reset thing that the World Economic Forum was talking about, where, by 2030, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. But they just mean us, not them, because, they also say that everything you need, you're going to rent. Well, if you're renting, that means there is a landlord. It's just that it ain't going to be any of us plebes, none of us poor little people. It's going to be all in the hands of the privileged few, the elite. They're going to buy up everything and rent to all of us, and we're going to be so much happier for it, because these people have such a great track record of doing what's best for us little people.
Humans have a term for this. Bad luck and raw deal. And this is some bullshit.
And this has been something that's been going on for some time now. Back in 2012, the government launched a pilot program to make it easier for investment firms like this to buy up properties in foreclosure and turn around and turn it into a renter's market, because people could no longer afford to be homeowners. In this article out of the Atlantic from February 2019, over 2 years ago, they were talking about how this, phenomenon had been happening, about how Wall Street was becoming our landlords, and the way they worded some of this was just ridiculous. I mean, after the '08 recession, they're talking about, oh, who would fill all these empty homes? Few Americans were in a buying mood. Few Americans were in a buying mood. Who the fuck would rather rent than buy? I mean, if you could own something, it used to be that if you actually had the credit and the down payment, then you could actually save money because your mortgage would be less than what a lot of people have to pay out in rent. But all of a sudden, people just weren't in a buying mood. What it was while the lending practices got tightened and they stopped giving regular people mortgages unless you had perfect credit, all these investment firms and Wall Street institutions, they could basically get free money. They could get loaned money at no interest, so why not buy it all up? And that's what they did. And they start corporatizing all the property. It's kind of like taking the housing market and turning it into the Walmart model. Big business takes over. And before you know it, you're going to be renting from some faraway company that doesn't give a shit about you, only cares about their profit margins. And of course you're going to get used and abused. It's not that hard to predict. About, oh, the trends that favored these new landlords were largely produced by the financial crisis that Wall Street had itself embedded. That some of these investment firms that had played a part in the housing crisis were now poised to profit from it made for a dismal irony. Yeah, it was just all, that's so ironic, isn't it? But now that process is being accelerated. They created a shit ton of money in the past year, and they're just giving it out to these investment firms at no interest, and now people like BlackRock are just buying up every property they can, because, you know, in the long run, they'll be able to put the squeeze on everybody for it. I mean, they're literally just buying up entire neighborhoods. And nobody really even seems to blink an eye, but one day you're going to wake up and then you're going to realize, oh, yeah, this very small group of people now owns all the places where you can live. They're not trying to sell, they're just trying to rent. And besides, they've, you know, strangled you right out of the market for being able to buy it. So, you know, now everybody's just going to have to be a renter. What do you know, the Great Reset. Everybody thought that was a conspiracy theory, you know, like the NSA spying on you or something. But then by the time it became not, it's like, oh, well, I guess it's too late. It's already here. That's what they're trying to pull with this Great Reset shit. And speaking of the Great Reset and the World Economic Forum, we got an event coming up on July 9th called Cyber Polygon, where the very same people I pointed out, warned in the summer last year that even more so than this COVID problem, we need to be paying attention to the possibility of a cyber pandemic, and saying that that was going to be something that made COVID seem like a small problem, which would be a pretty amazing thing. It would have to be a hell of a hack attack. And now, these past couple months, we've been seeing them, from the pipeline to the JBS to talking about little attacks on infrastructure in places like New York and the subway system, all these problems. And now we're going to have this big simulation exercise about a chain of supply attack. When people like that are making predictions and looking at things and telling you things are going to happen, you should probably pay attention to it, because these are the people that are in the know. These are the people that pull the strings. And I said back in March that I expected this year to be even crazier than last year. And we haven't surpassed it yet, but there's still plenty of time. And if something like a major hack attack takes down power grids, or hell, just the internet, could you imagine what kind of craziness you would see if people weren't allowed to get their daily internet fix? People couldn't log on to their Facebook and check their status and upload pictures of the fucking meal they're about to eat. People would lose their shit. So it's a good idea to think about and prepare for that to be a possibility, because it's a possibility. And it's exactly the kind of mayhem that'll help usher in this Great Reset, which it's happening. It's not just an idea. It's something that's being made to happen. And we're watching it happen in live time. So anything that could help usher that along, it's seeming more and more fucking likely. So take care of yourselves and keep your head on a swivel. Sláinte.
this world is my thoughts and my word, and I don't break them for no one. You understand? So say good night to the bad guy. 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 Come on. Come on. Come on. So say good night to the bad guy. 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 So say good night. So say good night. So say good night to the bad guy. So say good night to the bad guy. So say good night. So say good night. So say good night to the bad guy. I told you, don't fuck with me. 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 You stupid fuck. Look at you now.